The Golden Prison. Have you ever wondered what secrets are hidden behind the perfect walls of a mansion? Alejandro Vargas was a name that consistently appeared in financial magazines and business news. At 37, he was the CEO of the Vargas Corporation, a real estate and tech conglomerate that seemed to dominate every market it touched. Everyone who met Alejandro for the first time found him magnetic, tall, broad-shouldered, and with a practiced confidence that made one feel anything was possible with him at the helm. However, despite his public glory, Alejandro was, at his core, a complicated man. He was married to Sofia Jimenez, his college sweetheart. Sofia, 35, was in many ways the complete opposite of Alejandro. While he had that imposing aura, Sofia was gentle and unassuming, preferring quiet family nights to lavish galas. Their marriage had all the ingredients of a timeless love story. Two brilliant students from Complutense University in Madrid, who fell in love during late-night study sessions and Sunday lunches. Alejandro's ambition propelled him through the ranks, bringing him wealth beyond his wildest dreams. Meanwhile, Sofia opted for a career in early childhood education before becoming a stay-at-home mother after the birth of their daughter, Clara. Clara, a vivacious 4-year-old, was the light of the Vargas home, a sprawling estate in the exclusive La Moraleja neighborhood outside Madrid. With her father's mischievous smile and her mother's soulful eyes, she filled every corner of the mansion with joy. Sofia loved being a mother, and now 6 months pregnant with her second child, she was thrilled to give Clara a sibling. Her life seemed gilded, a perfect narrative of success and family. Yet anyone who paid attention would have noticed subtle cracks forming on the brilliant surface. Alejandro was often away on business trips, leaving Sofia alone in the immense, silent mansion. The staff, a nanny and a driver, took care of Sofia's daily needs, but they could never fill the emotional void Alejandro left behind. Sofia grew accustomed to solitary dinners in a dining room meant for 20. Nights often became restless, anxious hours, waiting for Alejandro's texts. Landed safely. Late conference call. Don't wait up. One night, a prickling of doubt began to bother Sofia. She remembered the way Alejandro used to look at her, as if she were his entire world. Now, something in his eyes had changed. They had become distant, as if part of him was perpetually elsewhere. Not even Clara's excited cries of, "Papa's home!" ignited the same spark in him. Sofia tried to dismiss her suspicions. Life can be stressful for a man running a multi-billion-dollar empire, she told herself. Still, every now and then, she would find strange receipts in his pockets from restaurants they never went to together, or see cryptic text messages flash on his phone. It gnawed at her heart. She once confronted him gently. "Is everything all right at work? You've been tense." Alejandro always brushed her off with a practiced ease, as if these were just the typical worries of a busy executive. But one evening, when he received a call and moments later claimed an urgent midnight meeting had come up in downtown Madrid, Sofia's stomach lurched as she watched him leave. The staff pretended not to notice, but Sofia was acutely aware of the hushed whispers and sympathetic glances they shared whenever Alejandro embarked on one of these late-night escapades. Something was deeply wrong, and her intuition screamed that a storm was brewing. How would you handle this brewing storm? Would you confront him directly, or try to find proof first? The unraveling the next morning, Sofia woke up with a heavy heart. Sleep had eluded her after Alejandro's late-night departure. She tossed and turned, a dull ache in her chest, but told herself she needed proof before making any assumptions. After taking Clara to daycare, she ventured into the dining room. The staff, too polite to show open concern, maintained their usual deference. Alejandro, predictably, was not at the table. Sophia forced herself to eat a piece of toast. Her stomach was rebelling with morning sickness and anxiety. The pregnancy felt more overwhelming than ever, physically draining, with her back aching and her hormones making her more sensitive to every shift in Alejandro's behavior. That day, Sophia decided to visit her sister Isabel, who lived a short drive away. Isabel was a pragmatic soul, the kind who faced problems head-on with unshakable courage. As Sophia's driver dropped her off at Isabel's modest but cozy home, she felt her shoulders relax. Isabel's place was far from the Vargas mansion, with its grand fountains and manicured lawns, but it had a genuine warmth and comfort. The sisters sat on a cream-colored sofa, and Isabel's cat, Whiskers, perched on the back, twitching his tail as if he sensed Sophia's tension. "Spill it, Sophia," Isabel said, offering her a glass of water. "You look pale." Sophia tried to steady her voice, but the words came tumbling out. She told Isabel about Alejandro's frequent absences, the midnight phone call, and the suspicious receipts. Though she had no concrete proof, every fiber of her being screamed that Alejandro was doing something beyond ordinary business concerns. "Have you asked him directly?" Isabel asked, pushing her straight black hair behind her shoulder. Sophia sighed, tears pricking her eyes. "Yes, he always says it's for work, or that I'm imagining things. And maybe I am. Maybe it's just the hormones. But something is not right." Isabel touched her chin thoughtfully. "You're not crazy or paranoid. You're pregnant, and you're sensitive to changes. Alejandro has changed, Sophia. I've seen it in the way he barely talks at family gatherings. He's always on his phone. You found receipts that don't make sense. You know him better than anyone. Trust your gut." The conversation lifted a weight from Sophia, but the sense of dread remained. That very night, Alejandro returned home close to 2 a.m. He offered no explanations, just a tired yawn. He didn't notice Sophia was wide awake, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. A few nights later, Sophia's suspicions solidified. She woke up in the middle of the night to a quiet hum, only to see Alejandro sneaking out of the bedroom door. The hallway lights were off, and outside, in the silver moonlight, she watched from the window as Alejandro got into his midnight blue Maserati and sped off without even a backward glance. That blatant departure sliced through Sophia's soul like a blade. She didn't even try to go back to sleep. Her mind raced, conjuring the worst possibilities. By morning, she decided to act. Sophia called a private investigator, a man named Javier Morales, whom Isabel knew through a mutual friend. Javier had helped Isabel once when a former landlord refused to return her security deposit, and he came highly recommended for his discretion and thoroughness. Sophia never thought she would stoop to hiring a detective to watch her husband, but desperation overrode her pride. When Javier arrived, Sophia asked for absolute confidentiality. She gave him the dates and times Alejandro typically left the house and handed over photographs of Alejandro's Maserati and the addresses of all his offices. "How often does he leave at night? Have you noticed any particular pattern?" Javier asked, scribbling notes in a small leather notebook. "Does he have a personal assistant who might be covering for him?" Sophia answered as best she could. When he was satisfied, Javier promised to begin surveillance immediately. "I understand the sensitivity of this situation," he said, his voice firm. "And I promise you, no matter what, you will get the truth." The bitter truth within a week, Javier Morales had gathered enough information to shatter Sophia's already fragile world. The private investigator requested a meeting at a discreet cafe in Madrid. Sophia, anxious to avoid any encounters with people she knew, wore sunglasses and a navy blue dress that concealed her growing baby bump. When she slid into a corner booth, Javier was waiting, his face grim. "I'm sorry I have to do this," he began, placing a thick folder on the table. "But it appears your suspicions were correct." Sophia could barely speak as she opened the folder. Inside were photos of Alejandro in restaurants, at a luxurious apartment complex, and most heartbreakingly, kissing a woman with long brown hair. The woman looked a few years younger than Sophia. She was tall and elegant, with an impeccable sense of style. Her name, Javier revealed, was Valeria Medina. She was a marketing executive at one of Alejandro's subsidiaries, a budding influencer often photographed at elegant events. Sophia could only stare, tears threatening to spill. "Where were these taken?" she asked. Her voice barely a whisper. Javier pointed to the photos. "That's a lounge in Beverly Hills, and this one here is the entrance to an apartment in downtown Madrid. From my observations, Alejandro has visited her place 4 times this week, always after midnight. He stays for a few hours, and then leaves at dawn." Sophia's stomach churned. Her eyes stopped on a particular image of Alejandro, holding Valeria's hand as they walked toward a chic rooftop bar. He was smiling in a way Sophia hadn't seen in a long time, relaxed, even joyful. The pain was immediate and visceral. "I can get more details if you'd like," Javier offered gently. "But from a professional standpoint, you have more than enough proof." Sophia's throat felt dry. "No, thank you. This is enough." On the drive home, Sophia grappled with conflicting emotions. Betrayal, heartbreak, anger, and a strange, numb acceptance that it was, in fact, real. It was as if she had stepped out of her own life and was watching from a distance, powerless to change what she saw. That night, Alejandro returned from another business meeting. Sophia confronted him in the living room, the photos scattered across the marble coffee table. He froze in the doorway, the color draining from his face. Time seemed to stand still in that moment. Clara's laughter echoed from the nursery upstairs, a gentle reminder of the life that was about to be shattered. "How long?" Sophia asked, her eyes filled with tears. She could barely keep her voice steady. Alejandro's gaze darted, searching for a lie, an escape, any rationalization. Finally, he let out a shaky sigh. "A few months, he admitted. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this." Sophia's voice broke. "It wasn't supposed to happen? How long have you been lying to me, sneaking out at night? Does she know I'm pregnant?" Alejandro ran a hand through his hair, unable to meet her eyes. "She knows," he murmured. "It's complicated, Sophia. I was under a lot of stress. I never meant to hurt you." "You never meant to hurt me?" Sophia's tone was sharper than she'd ever heard. "You lied to me for months. You've been with another woman while I'm here, carrying your child, Alejandro." She expected Alejandro to fall to his knees, to beg for her forgiveness, to swear it was a mistake. Instead, he offered a series of half-hearted excuses. Stress, a midlife crisis, a search for a thrill he felt he'd lost. Each word was like salt on an open wound. Sophia's breathing became ragged. She placed a hand on her belly, as if to shield her unborn child from the ugliness. "Get out," she whispered. Alejandro looked stunned. "Sophia, let's talk about this. Let's fix this." She laughed, a bitter, empty sound. "Talk about what? About you sneaking out in the middle of the night to be with her? For this entire pregnancy I've been suffering alone while you've been having a great time, it seems. Go be with her, if that's where you want to be. I'm done." And with that, Alejandro left, though he didn't go far, only to the guest house on the vast estate. His pride would not allow him to leave the property he believed was his by right. But for Sophia, that night was the beginning of the end. The illusions were gone, and there was no more pretending. The lover had a name, Valeria Medina, and a face. Her husband had a secret life. Do you think Alejandro's excuses are valid? Why do you think he chose to stay on the property instead of leaving? The confines of a gilded cage. Sophia spent the next few days in a fog. Alejandro was still on the property, though confined to the guest house, and Clara was the only reason Sophia maintained any semblance of composure. Her daughter was too young to understand why Papa was suddenly sleeping somewhere else, but she felt the tension. She asked questions with all the innocent curiosity of a child. Did Daddy do something bad? Why aren't you eating breakfast together anymore? Sophia's heart broke each time she had to force a smile and deflect Clara's questions. We're just giving Papa a little space, honey. During the day, Sophia kept busy with her prenatal checkups, having lunch with Isabel, and attending to some of the philanthropic obligations she had committed to months earlier. At night, she cried silently in her room, reliving the last few months like a broken record. She longed for the days when Alejandro would hold her after returning from a business trip and entertain her with exciting stories of corporate deals. She missed the moments of spontaneous affection, the weekend getaways, the quiet evenings they used to spend watching old black-and-white movies. Now, every time she saw him pass through the main house to greet Clara or take a phone call in the study, she felt a tightening in her chest. Alejandro seemed reluctant to pack up and leave completely, as if staying in the guest house preserved a shred of control over his marriage and his family. Sophia began to realize that Alejandro was no longer the man she had married. He protected his reputation above all else. She suspected that, for him, admitting to his family and friends that his marriage was crumbling would be a blow to his image. Perhaps he also felt genuinely guilty for hurting her, but not guilty enough to leave Valeria. One afternoon, while Sophia was reading in the solarium with Clara, she overheard Alejandro's voice from the hallway. He was on a phone call. She tensed, expecting to hear Valeria's name. Instead, she heard him discussing a new acquisition deal with someone named Ricardo, one of his key business partners. Alejandro's tone was tense. He was clearly feeling cornered, not just in his personal life, but in his professional dealings as well. Clara, oblivious to the adult drama, continued coloring in a notebook. Sophia wondered if it would be better for Clara to be somewhere else, away from this suffocating atmosphere. 2 days later, Alejandro cornered Sophia in the living room, looking oddly tentative. The pride in his eyes had dimmed. "Sophia," he began, "I think we need to talk about how to move forward." Sophia crossed her arms protectively. "Move forward? I asked you to leave." Alejandro frowned, frustration flashing on his face. "Look, I can't just drop everything. I have responsibilities here. My daughter, our unborn child, and the business that's run from this property. I still love you, Sophia. Believe it or not, I do." She resisted the urge to scoff. "You love me so much you were willing to cheat on me with another woman." His eyes flickered. I'm confused. Valeria she's a distraction, an escape. But it's not that simple." Sophia closed her eyes, pinching the bridge of her nose. She could feel her baby moving inside her, a small reminder that life was still moving forward, no matter how broken she felt. "Well, for me, it's simple," she managed to say. "You made a choice. You betrayed me. Do you think I'm going to stay here, pregnant and humiliated, so you can have your cake and eat it too? I may have once been that naive, but I'm done." Alejandro took a step closer, his voice trembling slightly. "I want to be involved with the baby and with Clara. I don't want to lose my children." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. For a moment, she saw a flicker of sincerity in his gaze, a glimpse of the Alejandro she used to know. "I won't deny you your children," she whispered, "but you've already lost me." The conversation ended there, abruptly and painfully. Alejandro returned to the guest house, and Sophia was left alone in the mansion, which now felt like a prison. She knew the staff whispered about the tensions and gave her sympathetic glances. She began packing small items, not entirely sure she was ready to leave, but needing some sense of control. As she folded Clara's clothes and her own maternity wear, she told herself she needed a real plan to escape this toxic environment. The tipping point. News of Alejandro's affair finally reached their families and close friends. Before Sofia could contain the damage, her parents, Roberto and Carolina Jimenez, arrived from Valencia, visibly distraught. Roberto, a retired police officer, was fiercely protective. He nearly knocked on Alejandro's guest house door, demanding an explanation. Sofia had to intervene to prevent her father from escalating the situation. Carolina, on the other hand, spent hours by Sofia's side, stroking her hair as she cried. Meanwhile, Alejandro's own parents, Nicolas and Penelope Vargas, were outraged by the scandal that threatened to tarnish the Vargas name. Nicolas, a staunch traditionalist and a strict father, condemned Alejandro's infidelity. Penelope tried to negotiate a reconciliation, her pleas delivered with a voice trembling with repressed fury. For the Vargas family, the facade of perfection mattered above all else, and Alejandro's affair with an employee was the worst public relations nightmare. In the midst of these family confrontations, Valeria Medina became a presence in the media. A few paparazzi photos surfaced online, capturing Alejandro and Valeria in Madrid, and further fueling rumors of their extramarital escapades. Sofia cringed each time she saw Valeria's name or face on social media, often accompanied by morbid gossip columns speculating on Alejandro's loyalty. The headlines were as sensational as they were cruel. Is Alejandro Vargas trading his pregnant wife for a younger flame? The Vargas scandal deepens. What hurt Sofia most was Alejandro's half-hearted defense of her. Vargas Corporation press releases simply stated, "We do not comment on personal matters," while Alejandro's own social media remained carefully curated with photos of corporate events and philanthropic initiatives. Nothing to indicate the chaos at home. Sofia's only solace came from Clara, who remained blissfully unaware. Each night, as Sofia tucked Clara into bed, she would read her a fairy tale or sing her a lullaby, hoping to preserve this fleeting innocence for as long as possible. But the suffocating tension was taking a toll on Sofia's health. At her next prenatal checkup, her doctor expressed concern over her elevated blood pressure and advised her to minimize stress. "You need to rest, Mrs. Vargas," the doctor said kindly. "Stress can lead to complications." Sofia forced a smile. She wanted to laugh at the absurdity of the advice. How could she rest when her world was falling apart? Upon returning home, she found Alejandro pacing the lobby, a deep frown on his handsome features. "We need to talk," he said brusquely. "I'm not in the mood to listen to your excuses," Sofia replied, sidestepping him. Alejandro put a hand on her arm, a touch that made her skin prickle with conflicting feelings. "It's about the Vargas Corporation board. They're concerned this scandal will hurt our image. They want me to address the rumors publicly." Sofia stared at him. "So now you care how this looks to everyone else? You didn't care when you were sneaking out to see Valeria, but you care now that your precious empire is threatened?" He exhaled, frustration evident. "Do you think I'm proud of what I've done? I made a mistake." "A mistake?" Sofia interrupted. "Sneaking out, night after night, sleeping with the same woman for months. That's not a mistake. That's a choice." He opened his mouth to argue, but no words came out. Sofia walked past him toward the stairs, a wave of dizziness washing over her. Her blood pressure was soaring. Clinging to the banister, she forced herself to calm her heart. Stress was the last thing she needed. As the days passed, the stalemate continued. Alejandro remained on the property, while Sofia secluded herself, trying to protect Clara from the drama. The tension reached a boiling point when, one night, Sofia heard Alejandro's voice from the living room. She went to investigate and found him arguing with Valeria on the phone. The fury in his tone took her by surprise. "I told you this is complicated," he shouted, pacing back and forth. "I can't just announce our relationship to the world, especially now. My family, my wife, they're in a mess." A cold understanding dawned on Sophia. Alejandro was torn between preserving his public image, trying to keep the mother of his children from leaving, and appeasing Valeria, whose ambitions were clearly overshadowing her discretion. Sophia let out a bitter laugh. The man she once thought was her rock had become a stranger, trapped in a web he himself had woven. She silently walked away and went to Clara's room, where her daughter slept peacefully. That night, as she watched Clara's serene face, Sophia resolved that she had reached her limit. Her baby would be born in a few months, and she refused to bring another life into this oppressive environment. She would leave, with or without Alejandro's blessing. A drastic decision. The next morning, Sophia woke with a sense of grim determination. She called her parents and her sister, explaining her intention to leave Alejandro, at least for a while, and that she needed a stable place to stay. Isabel immediately offered her home, but Sophia was concerned her sister's two-bedroom bungalow might be too small with a newborn on the way. Her parents, on the other hand, had a larger residence in Valencia. Plenty of space for Sophia and her children to find sanctuary until she decided her next steps. Sophia gathered documents, her marriage certificate, Clara's birth certificate, her medical records, and enough clothes for herself and Clara to last a few weeks. She also packed a small bag of baby items she had been collecting, tiny onesies, soft blankets, a few plush toys. The act of packing these innocent objects for a child about to be born into such turmoil broke her heart. To her surprise, Alejandro was not in the guest house that morning. A staff member informed her he had left early for an urgent meeting. Sophia suppressed a humorless laugh. Alejandro probably had no idea his wife was about to leave for good. By mid-afternoon, Sophia's plan was in motion. She and Clara would travel to Valencia with Isabel, who had come as soon as she received the call. Just as they were loading the bags into Isabel's car, Alejandro's elegant Maserati pulled up. He got out, alarm flashing on his face as he saw his wife and daughter preparing to depart. "What's going on?" he demanded, running to intercept her. "Where are you taking Clara?" Sophia motioned for Clara to get in the car first, not wanting her daughter to witness the ugliness of this confrontation. Then, she straightened her shoulders and looked Alejandro in the eye. "I'm leaving," she stated, each syllable resonating with finality. "I need space. I can't do this anymore, Alejandro." Panic flickered in his gaze. "You can't just take my daughter away from me. We have to talk about custody, about living arrangements." She shook her head. "We won't talk about anything until I'm somewhere I'm not suffocating in anxiety. You can talk to my lawyer if you want. But for now, Clara and I are leaving." She placed a protective hand over her belly. "And this baby is coming with me." Alejandro reached out, forcing her to look into those eyes that had once held so much love for her. "Sophia, I know I've been an idiot. I'm trying to fix things. Don't do anything rash." "Rash?" She almost laughed. "This is months, maybe years of betrayal, Alejandro. Months of secrets, lies, and midnight rendezvous. I gave you my heart, my trust, and you spit on it. I don't care about your confusion anymore. I care about the well-being of my children." He struggled to find the right words, and for a second, Sophia thought she saw tears welling in his eyes. But the memory of him kissing Valeria outside that apartment flashed in her mind, and her resolve hardened. Alejandro reached out to hold her hand, but she pulled away. "Let's be civil for Clara's sake," she said softly. "But I will not be disrespected anymore. I need time to heal and decide how to move forward." With that, she got into the passenger seat next to Isabel. Alejandro stood frozen, his hands clenched at his sides. Sophia refused to look at him as they drove away, focusing instead on Clara's angelic face in the rearview mirror. The little girl was humming a lullaby, oblivious to the life-altering decision her mother had just made. Sophia's heart pounded with a mix of fear, sadness, and a sliver of relief. She was walking into the unknown, cutting ties with the life she had painstakingly built with Alejandro. But she was also freeing herself from the shackles of his betrayal. In that moment, she promised herself she would do whatever it took to protect her children, even if it meant starting over completely. What do you think will be the biggest challenge for Sophia in her new life? How do you think Alejandro will react to her leaving? Share your predictions. Starting over, arriving at her parents' home in Valencia, felt like stepping into another world. The house was a cozy suburban dwelling, a single-story home with a well-manicured garden. Roberto and Carolina Jimenez welcomed Sophia with open arms, leading her to the guest room they had prepared. Clara shrieked with delight at a basket full of toys and coloring books, a thoughtful effort by her grandparents to make her feel at home. Despite her parents' warm hospitality, Sophia felt a rush of conflicting emotions as she unpacked. She sank onto the bed, pressing a hand against her belly and fighting the urge to cry. She was grateful for a safe place, but also flooded with an overwhelming sense of failure. Isabel, seeing Sophia's distress, gently closed the bedroom door behind them. "Hey," she said, sitting next to her. "You're not alone, Sophia. Mom and Dad support you. I support you. And you're doing the right thing for Clara and the baby." Sophia nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I just never thought I'd be in this position. Alejandro and I built a life together. A part of me still can't believe I left." Isabel placed a comforting hand on Sophia's shoulder. "You had to. You weren't safe there. Emotionally, psychologically. And the baby needs a stress-free environment." That afternoon, Sophia spoke privately with her father. Roberto, with his gruff exterior, tried to keep his anger toward Alejandro in check. He offered something Sophia didn't expect: legal advice. "I have a friend, Marcos Benitez," Roberto said in a quiet, measured tone. "He's a family law attorney here in Valencia. He'll help you sort out custody, financial support, everything." Sophia's head swam. She had never considered how complicated a separation or divorce could be. "Alejandro might fight me," she said quietly. "Not because he wants me, but because he won't let his public image take a hit. He'll try to turn this around on me. Or he might just try to overwhelm me with expensive lawyers." Her father's jaw tightened. "Then we'll be ready. You're our daughter. I'll do everything in my power to protect you." With her parents' encouragement, Sophia contacted Marcos Benitez and set up a preliminary consultation. Over the phone, Marcos provided a list of documents she would need for a potential custody and divorce case. The task of unraveling Alejandro's complex finances felt overwhelming, but Sophia pushed forward. She had no other choice now. Meanwhile, Clara adjusted to her new environment with surprising ease. Each night, Clara insisted Sophia read her the same picture book, Goodnight Moon, just as they used to do in La Moraleja. The routine was a comforting reminder that some parts of her life remained intact. As the days stretched into a week, Alejandro's calls became more frequent. Sophia, with her doctor's guidance, decided to block out stress and negativity as much as possible. But she allowed Clara to talk to her father via video call. She watched from a distance as Clara excitedly chattered about her new bedroom and the fun she was having with her grandparents. Alejandro made several attempts to speak with Sophia directly, but she remained firm. She would only communicate with him via text or email on matters concerning Clara's well-being. Still, curiosity tormented her. She felt compelled to check social media for any sign of Alejandro or Valeria, but she resisted the temptation, knowing it would only open fresh wounds. One afternoon, Sofia received an unexpected call from an old friend, Miranda Blanco, who worked in media relations for one of Alejandro's philanthropic initiatives. "Hi, Sofia," Miranda said with hesitation. "I just wanted you to know there have been rumors that Alejandro and Valeria appeared at a gala together last night. Photos are circulating. I'm so sorry." Sofia's heart squeezed. Though she had left Alejandro, hearing that he was with Valeria so openly still hurt. She tried to focus on her new reality, preparing for the baby, making sure Clara remained carefree, and forging a path forward with legal counsel. Yet Alejandro's presence loomed like a storm cloud. The legal battle. 2 weeks after arriving in Valencia, Sofia met with Marcos Benitez in person. He was a tall, soft-spoken man who radiated competence and empathy. They sat in his tastefully decorated office. Sofia clutched a folder containing the documents she managed to bring from the mansion. Given the evidence of the infidelity, Marcos began, scanning the folder. "We could file for divorce on the grounds of adultery. But Spain is a no-fault divorce state, so the affair won't necessarily grant you a better deal on that basis alone, although it could influence spousal support and custody considerations, especially if Alejandro's behavior affects the children's well-being." Sofia nodded, a wave of nerves washing over her. "Alejandro is a millionaire, possibly a multi-billionaire, if you consider the whole conglomerate. I don't want to be greedy, but I need enough for Clara and the new baby's future." Marcos took off his reading glasses and leaned forward. "That's understandable. Let's start by requesting financial disclosures. The law will require Alejandro to provide details on all his assets, income, and debts. As for custody, we'll propose a parenting plan that prioritizes the best interests of your children." She inhaled deeply. "He'll fight me. He won't let go easily. His pride. Well, you know how it is with powerful men." Marcos offered a reassuring smile. "We'll handle it. In the meantime, focus on your health and your pregnancy. Leave the legal complexities to me." That night, Sofia lay awake in bed, contemplating the enormity of her decision. She felt she was entering a battlefield where Alejandro would have every advantage: wealth, connections, a polished public image. But she also knew she was doing the right thing. Her children deserved a mother who was whole, not shattered by betrayal. Alejandro's reaction to the legal papers came swiftly. A week after she filed, Sofia received a barrage of texts from him that swung between anger and regret. One moment he was lashing out, accusing her of overreacting, and the next he was begging for another chance. She found it increasingly difficult to navigate his emotional swings. During a video call with Clara, Alejandro asked to speak to Sofia directly. She hesitated, but agreed. Alejandro's face filled the screen, a mix of desperation and frustration etched into his features. "How could you drag us into court?" he demanded. His voice trembled with barely contained fury. "We have a daughter together and another on the way. We should resolve this amicably. Do you want Clara to grow up in a broken home?" Sofia's cheeks flushed with anger. "It was already broken when you decided to have an affair. I'm not the one who destroyed our marriage, Alejandro. We tried to talk, but you never left Valeria. Don't blame me for doing what I have to do." He ran a hand over his face, sighing. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. The business is in a precarious position. The board is on edge because of the scandal. I'm trying to keep everything from falling apart." Sofia couldn't help the bitter laugh that escaped her. "And what do you think I'm doing, Alejandro? I'm pregnant, alone, and trying to build a life for our children away from the chaos you created." They stared at each other through the screen, the silence crackling with unresolved tension. Finally, Alejandro abruptly ended the call, leaving Sofia trembling. Once, she had seen Alejandro as her knight in shining armor. Now he was a man desperate to control a narrative he could no longer manage. A glimmer of hope. The weeks stretched into months, and Sophia's pregnancy progressed. Each day brought new challenges, legal depositions, communication through lawyers, and the emotional toll of ending a marriage she had nurtured for almost a decade. However, amidst the turmoil, Sophia found unexpected sources of strength. She began to reconnect with old friends in Valencia and to volunteer at a local community center her mother frequented. Although heavily pregnant, she helped organize reading programs and basic childcare, finding solace in the laughter of children. It reminded her of the fulfilling work she once pursued as a teacher. Sophia also found support in a small prenatal yoga group. There, she met women from all walks of life, each with her own burdens: single mothers, working mothers, older first-time mothers. These connections allowed Sophia to share her story and hear the experiences of others, breaking the isolation she had felt for months. When she confided in a fellow mother-to-be named Lucia about Alejandro's affair and her ongoing legal battle, Lucia squeezed her hand warmly. "You'll get through this," she said with a supportive smile. "Your baby will be stronger for having a mother who refused to be broken." Days before her due date, Sophia received a call from Marcos Benitez. "Good news," he said, sounding relieved. "Alejandro's team sent over an offer for a provisional custody and support agreement. It's not final, but it seems he's willing to cooperate, at least financially." Sophia's hand trembled a little as she held the phone. "That's a step forward. They're suggesting joint legal custody for Clara, with you retaining primary physical custody. Alejandro wants visitation rights, which can be worked out on weekends or through scheduled visits here in Valencia. He has also agreed to cover all your pregnancy medical costs, plus child support. The final agreement will require more negotiation, but this is a positive step." Her eyes filled with tears of relief. It was far from perfect. An entire labyrinth of legalities still awaited her. But at least for now, Alejandro was acknowledging his responsibilities. Sophia felt a flicker of hope that, if nothing else, he would remain a present father to Clara and the baby. That night, she told her parents the news. Roberto nodded solemnly, offering a rare smile. "Even if Alejandro is doing it to save face or appease his board, it's good for you and the children." Sophia couldn't argue with that. A sense of cautious optimism took hold of her, even as she prepared for the emotional test of giving birth without a husband by her side. She allowed herself a small spark of happiness, imagining the moment she would hold her newborn in her arms, free from the lies that had once strangled her spirit. A moment of truth one night, just a few days before her scheduled due date, Sophia's phone rang. It was Alejandro. She hesitated, her heart pounding, but answered. "I'm in Valencia," he said, "at a hotel near your parents' house. I need to see you, please." Sophia's mind raced. "Why?" she asked, clutching the phone tighter. "I need to apologize, properly." Against her better judgment, she agreed to meet him at a nearby cafe that stayed open late. It was a short drive from her parents' house, and although she was heavily pregnant, she felt she needed this one last face-to-face conversation before the baby arrived. She found Alejandro already seated at a corner table, sipping a cup of coffee. He quickly stood as she came in, offering to help her sit. Sophia declined, easing herself carefully into a chair. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. She noticed Alejandro looked thinner, with dark circles under his eyes. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Sophia, you look ready to pop," he said awkwardly, a half smile on his lips. She pursed her lips. "I'm due any day now," he exhaled, fidgeting with his coffee cup. "Listen, I'm sorry for everything I've done. I know that sounds empty right now, but I need you to know I regret hurting you." Sophia's eyes glistened with tears she refused to shed. "What do you want from me, Alejandro?" He swallowed. "Jessica and I are over. I ended it a few weeks ago. I realized I was just using her as an escape from my problems, and it wasn't fair to anyone involved. Sophia raised an eyebrow. So what, you want a medal? You chose her over me. When it mattered, a flash of pain crossed his face. I deserve that. But this isn't just about guilt. I still love you, Sophia. I'm sorry it took all of this mess for me to see how much I was losing. She felt a pang in her chest, a faint echo of the love she had once held for him. What you're losing, she repeated, her voice trembling. Sometimes we break things so badly they can't be fixed, Alejandro. Love alone isn't enough when there's no trust. He reached across this table, his hand hovering before he rested it on hers. Sophia, I don't expect you to come back to me. But please, just let me be there for you, for the baby. Let me at least try to make things right. For a long moment, Sophia looked at him, memories flashing by. Their wedding day under the Spanish sun, the birth of Clara, the nights they spent dreaming of a future they would build together. Alejandro's betrayal had stained those memories, but it hadn't erased them entirely. She gently pulled her hand away. I'm glad you're taking responsibility, she said. But I'm not ready to forgive you. I don't know if I ever will. What I do know is that our children deserve a father who is present and honest. For their sake, I'm willing to be civil. Alejandro nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. Thank you, he whispered. They parted that night with a quiet understanding that their relationship had irrevocably changed. A new chapter 2. Days later, Sophia went into labor in the early hours of the morning. She hurried to the hospital with her parents by her side. The contractions came in waves of pain. The staff prepared her room, and her sister Isabel arrived soon after, offering comforting words and a steady presence. In the midst of labor, Sophia clung to Isabel's hand. Sweat rolled down her forehead. She cried out with each contraction, the physical pain mixed with the emotional intensity of this pivotal moment. After hours of labor, Sophia gave birth to a healthy baby boy. The wave of relief and love that washed over her was overwhelming. In that instant, her heartbreak took a back seat to the fierce protectiveness and devotion she felt for this tiny new life. The news reached Alejandro, who burst into the hospital, breathless and disheveled, shortly after the baby was born. Sophia was exhausted, still in the delivery room, cradling her newborn. When Alejandro entered silently, he stopped at the threshold, tears once again welling in his eyes. Sophia studied his expression, seeing a raw vulnerability she hadn't seen in years. With a tentative nod, she allowed him to approach. He walked to the bedside and looked down at his son. Awe and regret were etched on his face. Carefully, she allowed him to hold the baby for a moment. In that silent, fragile truce, both parents recognized the new life they had created, the bond that would forever tie them together, even if their marriage was fractured beyond repair. Sophia took a shaky breath. She didn't know what the future held, if they would finalize the divorce, or if Alejandro would truly change. But for now, she focused on what mattered most: her children's well-being and her own newfound determination. She had walked away from a mansion and a lifestyle many dreamed of, but she had also escaped a web of lies. In her arms, she held a reason to believe that better days were ahead. This story of Sophia is a testament to the idea that even in the face of heartbreak, a person can find the strength to stand up for themselves and protect what truly matters: family, self-worth, and emotional well-being. We have witnessed a woman reclaim her independence, find refuge with her loved ones, and rebuild her life as she prepared to welcome a new child. Alejandro's actions serve as a reminder that trust, once broken, is difficult to repair. However, in the darkest moments, there can still be glimmers of redemption and hope for change. What is the most important lesson you think this story teaches us about forgiveness and family? Share your thoughts below.